we don't read enough. We don't read enough. We do not read enough. From reading, we gain many things. We are smarter, we are more creative, we are less stressed, and more. And yet still, we do not read enough. Reading is one of the most accessible tools that we have to improve our intelligence, to improve our creativity, to decrease our stress, and yet still, we do not read enough. You can read anywhere. You can read on your phone, you can read on your iPad, you can read on the computer. You can open up an actual book. And yet still we don't read enough. So I believe that there is a solution to this problem. I believe that the solution to this problem lies in competitive reading programs. The research think tank Pew discovered in a study that in the last 50 years, that today adults read less than any time within the last 50 years. Furthermore, in the United States, a country with a literacy rate of over 99%, a quarter of the adult population didn't read a single book last year. So why is this? We all recognize the benefits of reading. We all have seen the countless surveys and studies that prove that it will make you smarter, that you'll be more creative, that you'll have less stress. We know that through that you will have a higher income and that you will have a higher IQ. We value a high IQ and we value a high income. So why are we not valuing the tool that can bring us both of those? When the majority of people are asked this question, they will respond in some form by saying that I simply don't have enough time. My schedule is too busy. But I challenge this. I challenge this because according to other surveys, the average adult today has at least 20 hours of free time per week. 20 hours, in my opinion, is more than enough time to open up a book. So what's the problem? If it's not time, where's the problem? I believe that the problem began long before adulthood. In fact, I believe that the problem began in childhood. I believe that the problem began in primary school. Governments, like people, recognize the benefits of reading. They understand that it's important to have a literate population. And so they push reading very hard from an early age in their schools. And as a general rule, they're very successful. They, like I stated previously, the United States has a literacy rate of over 99%. Much of the developed world follows the same pattern. But there's a problem. Because after this initial reading ability is achieved, no longer is there a push to continue. This is the problem. An example, this stoppage can be seen in many ways. These students subconsciously recognize the stoppage and they respond accordingly. They notice that they aren't accelerating through the reading at the same rate as before. They aren't getting better at the same rate. So they conclude that they're not smart enough to read. Or they begin to notice that they don't enjoy the subject anymore. They begin to think that it's stale. So they don't read anymore. Whatever happens, the outcome is the same. The students stop reading. An example of this stopping can be seen in any school that you walk into. Go into any first or third grade classroom and you will see this. When students finish their work, they're instructed to open up a book, open up a free reading book, read something. They respond positively. However, as time goes on, no longer are they told to open up a book, but instead they're told to do the next worksheet, to do another exercise. This is because the weight of importance placed on the curriculum is overcoming the weight of importance placed on reading. By around the 6th grade, the majority of students will not be given free reading time in school. So, what can we do? Well, what we need is a bridge from the early years of an individual's life when they are learning to read to adulthood, where they know how to read. So, creating this bridge is not a straightforward task. It's a task that requires a spark of creativity. We know that it requires a spark of creativity because very evidently what we've been doing so far hasn't worked. So that brings me to sports. What do sports have to do with reading, you may ask? Nothing, right? Completely different. Well, I believe that sports actually contain the secret to motivating students to read. This is because sports contain competition. Competition is the driving force behind athletes pushing themselves further beyond limits they thought that they could never overcome. It pushes them to beat themselves and to beat others. What if we were to intertwine this competition with reading? What would happen? I believe that what would happen would be the solution to the problem. In the state of Connecticut, there's a teacher named Bill Derry. Bill Derry is awesome. Why is Bill Derry awesome? Because Bill Derry gets students to read. So how, then, you may be wondering, does this man achieve this? How is he getting students to read? Well, he's doing this through a program that he created 20 years ago, a competitive reading program. This program is called the Book Bowl. In the Book Bowl, students are assigned 10 books at the beginning of the year, then they will be quizzed on at the end of the year in a quiz bowl style format. Schools form teams of 5 students, making each student responsible for 2 books. And that's it. That's all there is to it. It's very simple. It's a very simple competitive reading program. So what happened? What happened with the Book Bowl? Did it work? Well, after students participated in the Book Bowl, they were asked, how did they feel? A 4th grader responded by saying, it was very hard because I had to read all the itty-bitty details. What they found was that these students were reading on levels never thought possible. They were reading far deeper into these books than ever before. Far deeper than on any homework assignment. This was also reflected in the all-important standardized tests that these students take. The reading comprehension scores of the district went through the roof after the Book Bowl. The school district has seen this as very beneficial, and so the amount of money allocated per student in library materials has increased tenfold since the conception of the Book Bowl. So what does this all mean? This sounds very complicated. What does it all mean? This means that competitive reading programs got students who otherwise weren't reading at their full capacity to read. It made them enjoy their reading. It made them feel connected to their reading. This is the power of competitive reading. Another program like the Book Bowl that I've had a personal connection to is the Accelerated Reader Program. The Accelerated Reader Program is also awesome, like Bill Derry, because it gets students to read. In the Accelerated Reader Program, students are able to read any book they want. Kindergartners through to 12th graders, they open up a book, they read it, they finish it, they take a short online reading comprehension quiz. Sounds boring, but it's not. Because at the end of the quiz, these students are awarded a number of points representative of how they did on the quiz. These points are constantly added together to give a final sum that demonstrates the quality and the quantity of reading done by the student. But still, does this work? How is this competitive? Well, when I moved in the 3rd grade to a school district in Louisiana, this program was masterfully used. It was really perfect. Because what the school did is it incentivized students to read by offering them prizes, by offering them trophies for the work that they were doing. It offered them a reason to read. It made them believe that reading was something honorable, something to aspire to. The students responded amazingly. A specific example that you could be seen any day during the school year at this school. What you would see is that students, the majority of students actually, would choose to stay inside instead of outside because they would want to be reading their books. They want to be getting ahead. This was a voluntary choice that the students made. They wanted this. Now, I don't know about you, but if you know anything at all about 3rd and 4th graders, then you'll know how important it is when a program gets students to consciously decide to go inside and read during their recess. That's the power of competitive reading programs. But I still haven't answered the question. Does it really work? Is there proof that it really works? For proof, you need data. And I believe that there's no better data to share than my own. So, when I was in the 3rd grade, I entered the year with an average reading ability. I was normal, 3rd grade. I read like a 3rd grade. By the end of the year, I read with a 7th grade reading ability. All because of competition. I read more too. When I entered the 3rd grade as well, I was reading about 20 books a year. By the end of the 3rd grade, I had read over 200 in 1 year. 200 books in the 3rd grade. That's what competition did. If that doesn't speak volumes to the power of competition in reading, then I honestly don't know what does. In my school, the most popular book series by far was the Harry Potter series. I can see it might be here too. Students love the Harry Potter books. But I would always make sure that I was the first one to check one out for a number of reasons. Firstly, I genuinely enjoyed the stories. I wanted to know what would happen next. But secondly, I also really enjoyed the points I could get from reading. It was a great way to get ahead and beat the other students. And then thirdly, was associated with pride. If you've ever held a Harry Potter book, or if you've ever read a Harry Potter book, you'll know that they're quite large. They're physically very substantial. They're often hardbound. So you can just imagine 3rd grade me. As you can see, I wasn't very large. Walking through the halls with this huge book under his arm was a great way for me to show everyone that I'm reading something hard, that I'm reading something that only the big kids are reading. It was a great source of pride for me. Sadly, this great environment that I was in would not last forever, because in the 5th grade, I moved to a school district that sucked. The difference was night and day. Students weren't incentivized to read because there was no reason to read. You only read what you had to. You read what the school wanted you to read, and that was it. You read what you had to do for homework. No more, no less. I honestly believe that if I had not been exposed to the accelerated reader program before, then I would not have read at all. Students at this school equated reading to homework. Something that they had to do, not something that they wanted. Now, by the examples of the book bowl and by the example of the accelerated reader program, I firmly believe that competition does work. I firmly believe that competition is the way to motivate students. Currently, our reading ability as a society is passable. It's average. It's mediocre. You might be able to call it sufficient. But why settle for average? When with a touch of creativity, we can be excellent. If we were to implement these competitive reading programs into schools, then everyone would benefit. Teachers would benefit because the teachers would be given a method where they are given the choice, the input on how to teach their students. They get to exercise their own creativity. The students would benefit because they're given an improved education. They will be taking in information for the rest of their lives at an increased rate thanks to their higher reading level. No one loses. I believe that competitive reading is the solution. I believe that competitive reading is the solution. If competitive reading programs were implemented in new schools and in all schools, then students would reap the benefits. They would be smarter. They would be more creative. They would be less stressed. What do we have to lose? We do not read enough. We do not read enough. We don't read enough. I firmly believe that if we were to use competitive reading programs, then we would be taking a giant step towards reading enough.